for your time. And you've put together all your experiences in this book, Memoirs of a Ghanaian Diplomat, A Country to Love and to Serve. Is this the best country, Ghana?
To my mind, yes, it's the country I would like to belong to.
You've served under a lot of presidents. Can you tell us who your favorite would be? I know that sometimes you've come very close to some of them.
I mean, I had no favorite. I just served all of them to the best of my ability.
I recall an experience in Nigeria where you say President Kufuor visited and he liked to work late in the night. Would it be an experience for a lot of the presidents that you'd come into contact with?
In Nigeria, I was the acting high commissioner. That was why I had that privilege. Before him, I was less senior, so I wouldn't have had that privilege with Liman, but I had that privilege with President Rawlings when we traveled to Paris and Brussels, and there was work to do. I mean, I'll be standing behind the minister while the minister conferred with him as late as it was necessary, but it wasn't with me as such.
Okay. So diplomatic missions, particularly abroad, what do they do really?
Well, we do 5 main things, I would say. We do represent the interests of our countries abroad. And we do so by attending meetings where other countries are convened to an international meeting. We report on developments in the host country, and we put our thoughts together and underline the ones we think will be useful for the development of our own country, for purposes of development, whether political, social, or economic development. We also do represent our compatriots who happen to be in the host country. We represent their interests. We cater for their welfare. When they get into trouble, we give them consular assistance. And we do receive the dignitaries from our country. We do a lot of protocol work, but we do a lot of things.
I recall not too long ago the foreign minister making an appeal to Ghanaians who travel outside to make known their presence to the embassies. It's not something that people want to willingly do, and I'm wondering, why not?
It depends on which country you're talking about. If somebody comes to Nigeria for a private visit and he's going to Maiduguri, it may not be easy for him or her to even communicate, because very often Ghanaians travel without knowing the address and telephone numbers of the Ghana missions. So if he knows that he'll be all right where he's going, he wouldn't bother to inform that he's in this country or in that country. It's only when there's trouble that, you get to know. I think it's something we all do. But if you're going to stay in that country for long, for a short course or for a long stay, it's always advisable to do that, because if you don't, you could get into trouble and nobody would even know that you had been there. And it doesn't make things easy, because when you get there and you tell us who you are, we would also know your relatives in Ghana. In case of anything, it would be very easy to connect.
So with your experience, what are some of the things that Ghanaians who travel come forward with the missions? What are some of the needs that they come forward with?
It depends on which country you are posted to. I mean, I served in Copenhagen, for example, and Ghanaians there didn't have any problem, because the system takes care of the kind of social problems that they would come to you with if they were in New York or in London. in those days. I don't know what this, how it is now, but that was how, you know. Or even in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we had to bury the dead. We had to...
The mission?
Yes, because if people go there and they don't have a good means, you know, to lead independent lives and so on, and they get into trouble and they die. You know, when you don't have, you are not earning your life in a decent manner, you wouldn't even want many Ghanaians to know you. You see what I mean? So maybe your close friends would know that you are Ghanaian, and those close friends may not be Ghanaian. So if something happens to you, they are not going to bury you. They would now come forward and say that a Ghanaian in that corner is in trouble. And when I was the acting High Commissioner, if you told me a Ghanaian was in trouble, it meant I was in trouble, and I would go. So whether they were sick and we had to take them to hospital at our own expense, because the mission doesn't have money for that kind of thing. I was just going to ask, did you have a budget for it? No. At our own expense, we will contribute. And it got to a point where it was like, hey, madam, you know. But we had to do it. It was a humanitarian gesture I thought was important to extend to our compatriots. At the same time, we rejoiced with them when they had moments of rejoicing. I mean, we stuck with them.
You know how they talk about Americans and how one American in trouble in one country is like the whole of America in trouble. Would you say it's the same for Ghana?
It should be the same. And I sensed it was. But it depends on where and who you're dealing with, you know. So, because a Ghanaian is a Ghanaian and he deserves what every other Ghanaian deserves. So it doesn't have to be a big person for you to run. You run because your compatriot is in trouble. And in a foreign land, the least one can give is a bit of solace. So
you've gone to a lot of places. You've traveled a lot because you've been posted to so many places that a lot of us only hear in the news. Where would you say is your favorite place so far to have worked?
My favorite place in terms of work would be Nigeria.
Okay. Where you were acting commissioner?
Yes. But I loved New York for the multinational atmosphere it provided. And I loved Copenhagen for the social values I came to appreciate in that country. I mean, I loved many places for different reasons. But in terms of work, get up and you were going, it was Nigeria because things were happening between Ghana and Nigeria. And I don't know. I never had more than 4 hours sleep.
In Nigeria?
Yeah, for the 4 years that I was there.
But you still loved it anyway?
I loved it. I loved it.
And you put all your experiences together, which I must say is very detailed. So I'm wondering, how do you remember every little thing that happened?
Sometimes I marvel at myself because I didn't have a single note when I was writing the book. But I have a kind of graphic memory since my school days. And I also love writing. In fact, whenever we got into trouble at school and we were being punished, during my hours of punishment, I would be doing creative writing. For this book, what I did was, when I decided to put my memoirs together, at every stage I transported myself into that world of 20 years ago, 35 years ago, whatever, from the beginning to the end. And then, of course, where there were dates to check and so on. These days with the internet, you can check those things. But,
so let me take you back to, I think this was in Nairobi, where you talk about a coup d'etat happening back in Ghana. And you recalling that your husband, who is a military person, was in the camp at the time with your children. Can you tell us exactly what was going through your mind? What was the worst thing that you were thinking?
That my husband would be killed. Because I had seen what happened in '79 and it wasn't a pleasant experience. So in 81, and I wasn't there, this time I couldn't run away with the children. And I had left my children to my husband. If something happened to him, the children were going to be stranded. And if something happened to him, we were all going to be stranded anyway. So I just blocked my mind and I prayed.
Because I think you said your mother appeared to you somehow and said you should pray.
A voice. I just, and I don't know whether that has ever happened to you. When you think very deeply, you can be transported. I just heard a voice telling me to get up and pray. And I remember the very prayer I said, and it was answered. That God should come to me with, I mean, by whatever means, to give me news of what was happening in my home. You saw how I got the answer. So I am very spiritual. Mm-hmm.
There was also another experience which you said when you were posted to Russia, I believe, you were thinking your family wasn't there with you and how you were missing out on parenting. And I was just thinking, how much time did you spend with your own children?
The first 10 years of my career were all spent in Ghana. So when we left, I think my eldest was 8+. So during that time, I was going in and out, but I spent a lot of time with them. After that, I must confess, I spent only very little time, you know, during the holidays, and then when I was home, maybe I'll take 2 months leave and go and see them.
What do you think you miss?
I didn't miss much because, you know, with modern communication, we even did our homework on phone. I spent a lot of money on telephone bills those days, and we didn't have WhatsApp and Viber in those times. and then we didn't even have email then. But even when they were quarreling, especially the twins, they could be at each other's neck, and they would call in. One would say, Ohima wants to kill me, he's killing me, and then I'll call back and beg Ohima not to do that, you know, that kind of thing. So I knew what was going on in the house at all times, but it was at a cost.
Did you feel lonely sometimes when you were posted to places alone?
Lonely? No, because I'm a very outgoing person. I make friends easily, and I also spend a lot of time in the office. When I'm in my home doing nothing, I write. In Copenhagen, it was quite cold, windy, and all that. So I decided to write about my infancy or whatever, you know, my family and all that. I always find something to do with my time. But if I needed to talk to people, I had people to talk to. I also made it a policy not to be missing my children. Otherwise, I knew I wouldn't make it. I would break down or something.
How much of your husband did you miss?
Enough.
So what would you usually do when you felt, oh, I miss him?
I call him, we talk. And then when it's time to go on holidays, I make sure I go back to them, and I spend all my time in the house.
Did he ever complain about your work?
Amazingly, no. He rather encouraged me.
It's always nicer that way, when they seem to understand your job better than you.
Yeah, he always encouraged me.
So, you know, statistics came out recently about Ghanaians who have been deported in 2014 alone, over 3,000 of them. And I think on that chart, South Africa was topping with another country. We have missions in a lot of places. Why do the missions sit there and then our citizens are deported. I mean, if they want to be in those countries, shouldn't we do all we can to see that they stay?
Well, international relations operate on something called international law, and obtaining a visa before you enter into another country is part of the requirements. In modern day, I mean, in this modern world, people manage to enter countries without visas. And I'm sure you've heard all sorts of terms used for that kind of thing. But when they do, some are lucky to get papers because the country of destination has a way of adjusting to accommodate them. Those countries which cannot accommodate them, if they should decide to deport them, they would inform the embassy. Because those who don't come with papers, they don't come telling you, officers of the embassy, that they are there. You wouldn't know. You will only know when they are in trouble and they are being deported or something. And we often give consular assistance. We send people to go and see them, see to their needs. And if really they have to come home, we provide the papers that they need. But a Ghanaian who is out there and wouldn't want to come home would find a way not to even bother with the embassy. So they may come without the embassy knowing that they've been in that particular country and been in trouble, and they have found their way back.
Any experiences, to share in any of the places that you've been? You remember the issue during the World Cup where some Ghanaians said, apparently, there was some kind of instability in our country. We didn't even know about it, so they were seeking asylum. Have you been somewhere that a group of people from your country are seeking asylum and giving all sorts of excuses that you've been called into?
No, not really. Not really, but I know it happens. And they come up with all sorts of stories that will convince the country of destination, to consider their plight. But we also know that these are harmless people, and you don't take it to heart.
Now, tell us what you want this book to achieve.
Well, two things. The first is to share my experiences with colleagues, with the general public, but more particularly with the junior colleagues, those who are coming up. I think there are lessons in there, and depending on the situation they might find themselves in, they might want to know what happened or what someone else did when he found himself or herself in that situation, and not think that, this is too difficult, or why me, or whatever. I think it's encouraging to know that others have been through the same route, and they didn't die or they didn't collapse because of pressure of work or anything. It's also to give them an idea of the kind of diplomatic practice that we had the privilege of, and those who have retired, those of my generation.
You sound like you've actively retired. Okay, you haven't retired because you are still practicing somehow.
Yeah, we had the opportunity of serving under very capable senior colleagues who were ready to impart their knowledge and so on. And it was because we learned from them, so they can also learn from us, that kind of thing. Secondly, it's also to bring out some observations I made in the course of my work, especially when I got to the senior level, the inadequacies, not of Ghanaian diplomats, but of African diplomats in general, especially with regard to the preparation for negotiations. And, make them realize that it's something we need to work on, because we need to move from where we are. Africa needs to move from where it is.
So let's build on that bit with education or career development, which you write extensively on also in your book. How do you prepare to be in the sort of position that you have been in?
Well, you have to be well educated. And by that I mean you have to go through university, get the opportunity to go to some higher institutions of diplomacy. You have to have the luck to work under very capable people like I did with Mrs. Gloria Nikwe, Ambassador Gbeho, I mean, several of them. I worked under somebody called E.O. van der Poel, who was, I think, A3 when I entered the service. He wasn't too senior, but he showed me the nitty-gritties of the job. But the senior ones who mentored me were really Mrs. Nikwe, Gloria Nikwe, the late Mrs. Gloria Nikwe, who was Commissioner for Foreign Affairs. And I had some good ambassadors too, who were not even diplomats by career. You know, Ambassador John Bauer, who was with me in Moscow, Ambassador Christine Odru. I worked with her for a very short while, but it was quality time. And
do we have enough training institutions in Ghana for your kind of work?
Training institutions, you mean beyond university?
Beyond university, yes.
I know about Lesia, which is an institution established by the Foreign Ministry with the sole purpose of, you know, giving us that kind of refinement. Now it's an MA program. And then, I don't know whether you've heard about the institute that has been established by a group of people, including myself, called the Institute for Diplomatic Practice and Development Policies.
Apparently that is what has been keeping you busy.
It's been in existence for the past 4.5 years, and we have trained over 300 people, but for short courses. And we train both Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians, because it's an institution for mainly African officials. And these are the two that I know of in Ghana. There may be others I'm not aware, but to zoom in specifically on diplomatic training, these are the two.
Do we need more?
I should think so. I should think so, because we need more people to be aware of what happens outside. And in fact, whatever is happening inside our countries is the result of developments outside. And we need to understand so that we adjust properly, so that we plan properly, so that we strategize as we should. It's not, right now we respond to what happens outside, and that's not good enough.
We have to be proactive.
Voila.
When will this book be available for anybody who is interested to lay their hands on it? A Country to Love and to Serve, Memoirs of a Ghanaian Diplomat.
Well, we are launching it on the 10th of September at the Accra International Conference Center. And after that, we will sell it in, as at now, I know the EPP bookstore near Legon has asked to
stop.
Yeah, so we are considering that favorably.
I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to us. But oh la la, where did that come from?
My oh la la?
Yes.
No, because I speak French. I mean, until I entered the foreign ministry, you know, I think my French was way heavily on me. But now, well, I'm able to work in both languages, so.
Okay.
But that expression comes to me naturally.
Oh la la, Nana, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Pleasure.